Today on the Home Winemaking channel, I'm going to show you our new and improved wine press. If you've yet to buy one of these awesome Home Winemaking channel hoodies, make sure to do it. It'll save you a little bit of money on your heating bill this weekend, and it's relatively stain resistant. And I know that because I've already spilled coffee on it, I've spilled salsa on it, and I'm pretty confident that if I spill wine on it, it's going to be okay. Now, you've probably seen in the past us using a couple little basket presses like this. This is the Westin fruit press. It's a number 25. It's a pretty good entry-level wine press. You can use it for apples or grapes or really just about any fruit you're going to press. But as time's gone on, the sizes of these wine projects has grown and grown and grown. And running through a little number 25 press like this has just gotten to the point where it's just not really feasible anymore for these big projects. That's not to say that I'm not going to keep these little 25 presses, because when you do have little 100 or 200 pound batches going, it's really a great press for that, whereas this press is just going to be a little bit too big for that. I got this press at Label Peelers. They're an online winemaking shop, home brewing shop, and they're located in Ravenna, Ohio, and I found that they've got about the best pricing on big equipment like this. The only thing is I had to drive there to get it. So, I mean, I think they'd probably ship it on a pallet, but then you're talking freight shipment. But even that being said, I've saved a lot of money on this press, and it made a good excuse to go see my cousin in Ohio. Let's first talk about basket presses in general. Like I said, you can use these for just about any fruit that you can press. I will mention if you're going to press something like apples in this, you're probably going to want to line it with a muslin, like kind of like a cheesecloth type porous cloth so it doesn't squeeze through. But with something like grapes, that's just not the case. You don't need to put a liner on when you're pressing grapes. I look at these gaps here, and actually when I first saw this press, I was a little bit concerned that the gaps were going to be big enough that grapes would squeeze through, but it didn't happen. They stayed right in here. It was not an issue at all. The number 40 or 40 that you see on this, or 25 or 30, what that means is the diameter of the basket. So this basket is 40 centimeters in diameter. A number 25 is 25 centimeters, 50 is 50 centimeters. So when you scale up from, say, a 25 to a 40 or a 40 to a 50, you're making a huge increase in volume. This number 25 holds something like 4 gallons, whereas this number 40 holds, I believe, 18.5 gallons of wine, or 69 liters, which is really a lot. What that comes out to is about 500 pounds of crushed and destemmed grapes or freshly fermented red wine per press. So if you're doing 1,000 pounds, you can do that in about 2 press cycles. And when I say 2, I mean we're kind of pre-squishing it, pre-squeezing it. But that's a lot. That's about 4 or 5 times more than we're getting out of the number 25 press, which is really a lifesaver considering we've got this 2,000 pounds of grapes over here. We'd be pressing for probably 2 days with these little presses. The wood on almost all wine presses is going to be beech. It's a really pretty hard wood. It's about as hard as oak, but it's also relatively flexible. It can flex without cracking. So when you're just exerting so much pressure on these grapes and it's trying to swell this basket press, you don't really have to worry that it's going to crack or anything like that. Some things I like, I'll talk about some things I like and a couple things I don't like about this press. Some things I like this lever style pin that they use to hold the basket together. It seems like it really squeezes it and locks it tight, and you don't have to really worry too much about getting it all perfectly aligned. It kind of self-aligns when you put the lever down, and you'll see that on a lot of the larger sized basket presses. I also like that it's just built like a tank. The thing weighs about 150, maybe 175 pounds, and it is just rock solid. You can see why presses like this are around for 100, even maybe 200 years. They usually stay in the family. It's kind of feels kind of like a timeless piece of machinery. I also like that this has a 2-speed ratchet. So it has an inner set of holes and an outer set of holes. If you put it on the inner set of holes, you can crank down a little bit faster. And when you put it on the outer set of holes, you get a little bit more torque. So I would say for the most part, we're using the outer set of holes, but when you're just getting it started, you move into the inner set of holes. When you want to reverse directions on a ratchet press like this, it's really simple. You just rotate the keys 180 degrees on a horizontal plane, which allows it to ratchet back. This comes with 6 blocks, or like press blocks, that you stack up to build the space between this ratchet mechanism and the pressing plates. If there's one thing I would like a little bit more is if it came with a few more of these blocks. I'd really like about 10, because if you were to press, say, like a half full basket, 6 is going to end up bottoming out. You're going to really need to put some sort of spacer. And what we'll end up doing is taking some just 4x4 untreated lumber and making just a few more blocks for this. So it's not a huge inconvenience or anything, but I find that we often are pressing not full baskets. You might press 2 full baskets and all of a sudden you've got just a little bit left over and you find that you have about a half basket less. I really like that the plates on this have these, what looks like stainless steel handles. So you can yank those out really easy. You don't have to like pick your fingers under them to get them out. The handle on this, on our old press, it kind of threaded in, which always felt like a little bit of a weak spot. I like how this kind of slides in and has a set screw to lock it down. Now that being said, it comes with a little bit of like enamel in this hole, so it slides in fine, but what we did find is we accidentally got it stuck in there. We had to use a little pry bar to pop it out. So if you get a press like this, you may want to give it a little quick touch up with some sandpaper around this spot where the huge lever handle slides into the hole, just to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. And if it does, you can still kind of wiggle it out. You'll notice that the bigger size presses all have usually 3 bands, and that's really just necessary. When you get into this size of a press, it would probably just bow that wood a lot too much if you had a big gap that you're trying to span with these press plates. The instructions that came with this were pretty not great, but again, it's like buying a wrench. Once you've used a ratchet press like this, they're really all kind of the same. You don't really need the instructions. The one thing that is something they'll mention in the instructions is when you're stacking these blocks, you want to make sure the top 2 blocks are tight to the screw. And I think what that means is this thing is cast iron. If you put it way out like this and you're exerting probably a few thousand pounds of force when you're really cranking on this thing, you just don't want to put yourself in a situation where you could crack this huge cast iron ratchet. Now, some people might wonder, why didn't I get a bladder press? So you go to these really big wineries, a lot of them are using bladder presses, although I will mention there's kind of this resurgence of wineries using basket presses, and they have a lot of claims around quality. Probably a lot of it's more marketing than reality. Well, first of all, I really do like these basket presses. They're rock solid. They're kind of timeless. I'm not really worried about how clean it is. You're bringing these grapes in off the vineyard. They're not clean. They're not sanitized coming in. And this wood, you can sanitize it relatively well. But the one also reason is the price. These things cost about half as much as their stainless steel bladder press counterparts. So if you're running like a winery, small winery type operation, this might be a little bit tedious, and you might want to go for the bladder press where you just turn a valve and it just about presses itself. But for the home winemaker, you're making wine not necessarily just because you want to be the most efficient possible at making wine, but you're also enjoying the experience. So this is this like sort of authentic experience. I compare it to driving a stick shift versus driving a self-driving car. It's just kind of a fun experience. You bring some friends over, you can take turns cranking on the ratchet, have a few wines in the process, and it just feels like you kind of went back in time and you're making wine. Because this thing is super heavy. I've made this little dolly for it, which I would definitely recommend doing if you're gonna have a wine press, anything over like a size 30. And I show a little bit more detail about this on my Patreon page, patreon.com/makewine, if you wanna sort of copy the thing that I did here. Beyond that, some tips. If you want to increase press efficiency on a big basket press like this, you can use rice hulls. What I find is that I can't really get them cheap enough to make it really make a lot of sense. If you really want to be super efficient in terms of how much juice or wine you're getting out with a basket press like this, you really want to break up the press cake and give it a second press. So just kind of give it a pretty quick light press on the first pressing, break it up quick, stick it in again, and then you can really bear down on it, and you'll probably get, like with this one press being about 500 pounds, before repacking we probably got about 33 gallons, most of that being free run, some of that being press, and then by repacking we probably got another 1.5 gallons. So it's not nothing, and if you've got the time, it's worth repacking it and giving it a second go. If you've got any questions about this press, make sure to mention in the comments section below, or if you've got any tips for using a press like this. I always like to hear what other people's kind of little tricks they've learned over the years are, and since these presses have been around for like 200 plus years, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the comments that have got a lot of experience with these. Hope you like this video, and thanks for watching.